Okay, folks, I'm not sure how I'm going to say this, but I have to say this. First of all, welcome to the C Files. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and it helps the channel out. I don't ask for money. I don't monetize, but I do want to get good messages out, and I know that a lot of people are trying to do that, and I appreciate these platforms because it gives the common person an opportunity to say what they've been screaming at the TV for years. My generation, at least, when they were watching the news, screaming at the person reading the news because they didn't like what was being put out. And now finally, there's a platform. There's platforms where they can express what frustrated them. All right. So these are good. These are good. I don't have anything against social media. I don't have anything against YouTube per se, or Rumble, or BitChute, or any other social media out there, True Social, whatever the media might be, because it gives people an opportunity to express their frustrations. Now, when censorship occurs, that becomes a source of frustration as well. But, I think in time we're going to work through all of that. But here's the thing, I was a police officer for 30 years, okay? I worked for 3 different police departments in the San Diego area, San Diego County, including my first department being San Diego Police Department. And then I worked for 2 state-level police departments, working in higher educational institutions, community colleges, as a police officer. One community college I worked for in San Diego policed 100,000 people. And we asked one day if San Diego PD or the Sheriff's Department ever wanted to take us over and eliminate our department and just go ahead and take the colleges. And they both said no because we're too busy. We were too busy. We had too many calls and too much going on for them it would be tax their personnel too much. So it goes to show you, it doesn't matter what kind of policing you're doing, whether it's harbor police, whether it's college police, school police, university police, municipal police, state level police, which most college and university police are state level, school police are state level, whatever it is, you're doing the job. You're out there doing the job, and you can get in the middle of bad situations, okay? And we had plenty of that happen. I mean, I can tell you right now, working in inner city community college district, which had 3 main colleges, along with continuing education centers, and classes in the evenings meeting in churches and recreation centers and office buildings, and we could get calls to any one of those locations to handle a situation. We were doing basically municipal police work. And if you add dorms and all of that, then for example, the University of California, San Diego is a miniature city. It's a city within itself with residents and the same kind of problems that happen in the communities. It's just a different atmosphere. Before I retired in 2020, the defund the police movement got started. The George Floyd riots and activity that, where there was a lot of looting and rioting and people being harmed because of the George Floyd incident out of Missouri. And this was exploding all over the country. And then, so that we had to handle that. And then police officers began to be targeted. And this was a concerted effort to target police officers, especially white police officers, and that comes out of the critical race theory, uh, uh, and it comes out of the theory of the hierarchy of oppressor versus oppressed and so forth. I can't think of the name of it. I can't remember the name of it. Anyway, the point is, if you're white, you're the oppressor. If you're a minority, you're the oppressed. If you wear a police uniform, you're the oppressor. That mentality coming out of critical race theory, which I believe is just a religious cult, in my humble opinion. I almost had it. I hate it when I can't remember the words. Um, Transitionality or whatever it is. Anyway, all right. Here's the point. Police officers began to be targeted, and they began to be targeted for the purpose of demonizing the police. And a police officer could be sitting in his car, writing a cold crime report, concentrating on the report and not bothering anybody, not doing anything to anybody, and that officer would be targeted not only for ambush, but also for social media ambush, where people come up with cell phones and harass the officer and try to demonize the officer in any way that they could. An officer could be conducting a very legitimate detention based upon reasonable suspicion, which is what he is trained to do or she is trained to do when there's a crime that's suspected to have occurred and the person they have detained is suspected to have committed that crime. That's basically how it's defined and how it was defined by the Supreme Court in case law. And these officers are doing their job by doing a legal detention for the purpose of investigation to determine if there was an issue. For example, if you see somebody walking down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning with a television, this is an old example, but it's legitimate. Let's say with a piece of electronic equipment, all right, that's brand new, got the tag hanging off of it, and you just passed by a electronics store. And it looks like the door may have been jimmied on that electronics store. And you look over and you see this guy walking down the street with that piece of electronic equipment with a tag hanging off of it, a price tag. That's what's called reasonable suspicion. You have reasonable reason to believe that individual broke into that store, stole that piece of equipment, and is now walking down the street with it. That is a legal detention. You can go and detain that person. But what happens on social media? On social media, it becomes, because everybody brings their cell phones out, right? Somebody can't sleep and they hear the commotion going on outside, or they see the lights going on the police car. Oh, let's go find out what's going on. And then they start accusing the officer of just, oh, you're detaining that guy because he's this or he's that. And what are you doing, officer? You're just harassing people. You're just harassing the neighborhood. And that comes out on social media, and it's the demonization of the officer who's just trying to do his job. So we began to figure out, the less we do, the less we become a sensation on social media, and the less we get questioned by police administrators, the less we get in trouble from police administrators, because police administrators did sometimes attempt to or tend to respond too quickly to social media exposure of the officer, because it makes the department look bad. And it wouldn't even matter if the officer's doing everything correct. Officers would be targeted. And so the officers said, you know what? we're just doing the bare minimum now. We're not going to do anything. I stopped doing traffic stops, completely stopped doing them. It didn't matter how bad the violation was in front of me 6 months before I retired, because I knew that if I stopped that car, there was a likelihood that I was going to be demonized as harassing this person. You can't see who's driving the car when you're behind the car. You just see the car make a violation. You pull it over. It's someone who is of a particular category that's in the oppressed category under CRT. They bring the cell phone out and they demonize the officer, and they're very good at it. They make the officer look like he's just harassing that individual because of, racism or sexism or some other um, category, social category, that makes the officer look like Hitler reincarnated, right? And so the officer is completely destroyed on social media, and the officer did nothing wrong. But everybody piles on. So we finally said, we're just going to handle radio calls, handle them to the best of our ability, and that's it. We're not putting any extra in. Because when we put anything extra, all we get is grief. All we get is an investigation on us. All we get is we become a social media sensation, even when we do everything right. This is what is happening to officers all across the country. So you folks that go on YouTube now, and you have these YouTube channels, and the purpose of the YouTube channel is to demonize police officers by any means necessary. Would you like to go do their job for just even one day? Would you like to be the one who did everything right, and yet you still become demonized on social media? And then there's these YouTube channels, and I just saw one, that make up these fictional stories about police officers. And it's always about a white racist police officer harassing someone who is in an oppressed category of the critical race theory. Transsectionality, I think, is what's the name of it anyway. The oppressed versus the oppressor. And they make these stories up, and they even sometimes will act them out with actors. And the whole idea, the whole purpose is to demonize law enforcement in general, and especially to demonize white law enforcement officers, because, they're in the oppressor category in critical race theory. So we're no longer individuals now, we're all categories. We're in categories. And if you're placed in a certain category, you are demonized. It doesn't matter what type of person you are, or how much you try to help your fellow human beings, or how kind and generous and good you are to them. It doesn't matter. You're in the oppressor category. You are evil personified. You are a horrible person, and we are going to demonize you no matter what. That is what is happening. So, citizen who wants to have the police arrive when you dial 911 and you need immediate help because someone's breaking into your house, or someone is assaulting you at a gas station, or someone's trying to kidnap you to take you to a second crime scene so they can sexually assault you and then murder you and bury you in the woods. Now all of a sudden the police they're okay. Law enforcement's not Hitler personified anymore. Law enforcement's now suddenly not this evil entity that needs to be defunded. I'm really tired of it. I'm tired of the false demonization. When when there are corrupt officers, they need to be dealt with. Yes, I agree with that, and I will join in with you if there is real corruption going on, like the Rampart division out of LA when that happened. There's other cases I could talk about, but those are rare. The vast majority of law enforcement officers, I'm talking municipal officers and state officers and educational police officers and so forth, they're just doing their job. And they're doing it within the confines of written law, case law, and trying to do it within the confines of the Constitution. But the Supreme Court makes those determinations. And then there are policies and procedures that are written by the police departments that they're required to follow. Uh, there were limits I would not go beyond. I would not go to house to confiscate firearms just randomly from citizens. That's a clear violation of the Constitution, and that would be a clear illegal order, unlawful order. And I would not obey an unlawful order. And not only me, but I've seen plenty of police officers over the years get into really heated arguments with supervisors and managers in police departments because those supervisors and managers wanted them to do things that were unlawful and wrong. And I've seen a lot of the officers win those arguments. I have seen it, folks, up close and personal. So, yes, the police do need to police themselves. But you know what? I think maybe it's time that people who are posting social media about police and putting out demonizing false information about law enforcement, I think maybe it's time they need to police themselves as well. Now, you'll notice I did not talk about federal law enforcement because there does need to be a lot of house cleaning when it comes to federal law enforcement. So I'm reserving comment on federal law enforcement until such time as that house cleaning occurs. And I believe that it will occur not too far into the future. At least I'm hoping that's the case. That doesn't mean that there aren't people in federal law enforcement, like in municipal law enforcement, that are trying to do the right thing. It just means that when corruption runs the department, the officers, the good officers, they don't have a whole lot of options. If they expose the corruption, they're fired. Maybe even them and their families are targeted. So I think what happens in those cases, a lot of the good officers, they'll leave that department and go somewhere else, into some other law enforcement agency that they believe is not doing the shenanigans, and they will go work for the other agency. That happens from time to time. Just giving you the inside scoops, folks. So there are a lot of officers out there that want to do the right thing. So why don't you help them do the right thing? Now, here's the other thing. and this is advice to you citizens out there that want to get into an argument and a fight with the law enforcement officer at the scene as he's trying to conduct his business. Bad idea. It doesn't matter how much you think you are in the right. You need to understand that the law, especially today, is very, very complicated. And it's not as cut and dry as you might think. You might think that the officer doesn't have a right to do this or do that because maybe you went online and you researched a few laws that you think is going to give you the right to challenge that officer in the field, not knowing or understanding the full scope of the law. But then you make a YouTube video and you say, moron cop or idiot cop doesn't know the law, da 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 da. I've seen these all over social media. And every once in a while I'll go watch them and I'll be scratching my head going, okay, the person who made the video obviously has no clue what they're talking about. Why would they put this out this way? Well, it's either ignorance or it's sinister. It's on purpose to demonize law enforcement. If you're dealing with a police officer, cooperate, be polite. If he asks for ID, give him ID. If he had no legal right to ask for your ID, guess what? There are lawyers who go to court and make those arguments and get cases dismissed, and that happens. And you've cooperated the whole way, you get the case dismissed, your rights were violated because it was an illegal detention. Guess what you have now? Now you have a lawsuit. You can go sue the officer and the police department, or maybe even the municipality. That's the right way to do it. That's the best way to do it. And then it goes to court, and you're this nice, wonderful person that didn't do anything wrong. You're full cooperation with the officers. You didn't give them any resistance. You didn't give them any lip. And the court's going to go, I think we have, hundreds of $1,000s worth of lawsuit here, or $1 million worth of lawsuit that we can award this individual. That's how it works. But if you try to take the officers on in the field, I guarantee you're going to lose. You're not going to win that battle. No matter how self-righteous you think you are, or how much righteous indignation you might have, you're going to lose that one. But the reality is, many of you will not take this advice. And you will go out and you'll act the fool, and you'll just make things worse for yourself. And many of you are so indoctrinated in critical race theory and intersectionality, which is the word I was trying to think of earlier, intersectionality, the idea of the oppressed and the oppressor, which is are false categories, by the way, because it's just a category of a religious cult of which I am not a member. And you're going to continue to try and demonize police and defund police and break down society. I heard an interview the other day where the guy was saying, why do we even need nation boundaries? What was that, just an imaginary line? The guy was a total globalist and wanted to break down even the concept of nations. We just become one world. Okay, that is idiocy on steroids. We are one world, but we are one world made up of very different people with different cultures, different ways of life. And there's nothing wrong with people of the same culture grouping together and having their community and their society, and it gets separated out. That's okay. Does that stop people from being courteous and kind to each other? No. Does it stop them from trading with each other? No. Does it stop them from, you know, sitting down and having a conversation and learning from each other? No. It's just that there's when they go home, they're still going to have their separate cultures and their separate the type of foods that they like and the way they do things in their family, and it's all going to be different. There's nothing wrong with that. And nations, most nations in the world are built upon that. They're built upon culture. They're built upon uh, ethnicity, even. You have white Europe, you have black Africa, you have Asia, which is different from white Europe. I mean, and the cultures are different from one another. We have weird ideas these days. Defunding the police is one of them. And so, before you decide you want to just demonize police and destroy them, why don't you go and walk a day in their shoes and see what they have to deal with? And how many lives do they save every year? Oh, that's a message that never goes out on social media because that is contrary to the agenda, isn't it? Just food for thought. And not my normal topic, but it's something I feel needs to be addressed. And I probably didn't do the best job with it. But maybe if even one person takes time to really think about it and say, maybe I can reconsider this or maybe I can take another look at this, then it would be worth it. God bless. I'll see you next time on the C Files.